Pondercast is supported by listeners like you through Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Pondercast. Hi, I'm Laurie Brown. Let's Pondercast. This Pondercast is the full meal deal. It has everything. It has tons of music, it has an interview, and a special sound piece. Now, the music you're going to hear is an album called Quiet River of Dust, Volume 1, by Richard Reed Parry. Richard's normal gig is with Arcade Fire, and he plays a lot of instruments, including guitar and double bass and drums and celesta and keyboards and accordion, and he produces. But Quiet River of Dust is his solo album, and it's wonderful, and you must buy it. Richard had this remarkable residency at the Société des Arts Technologiques in Montreal, where he presented this album inside a dome with 360-degree video that he shot while on tour with Arcade Fire in places all over the world. Shots of the woods and streams and oceans from underneath and above and forest floors, everything natural. So while you're listening to this album, picture yourself entering a dome, finding a beanbag bed to lie on, staring upwards, and being completely immersed in nature as the band, over at the edge of the dome, performs the music live. It was otherworldly, and I was lucky enough to work with Richard to create a sound piece for the opening of the show. And you're going to hear that at the end of the album, and I think it's perfect for just lying on the couch and decompressing after you listen to this extraordinary album. But first, this is the interview that I did with Richard in his kitchen in Montreal about the album Quiet River of Dust. Richard, would you say that you have a particular creative headspace that you find or want to be in before you start making music?
I think my favorite headspace to be making music in is not being aware that I'm making music, actually. I think my favorite times making music are often when I just find myself making music and I haven't sat down and thought, I'm going to play music now, or I'm going to put time aside for this, or I'm going to try and write a song, or I'm going to try and finish a song, or have a deadline for a composition for somebody else or anything. I think my favorite moments are really discovering little recordings that I've made where the same thing applies, where I didn't put time aside, I just was noodling and was pressing record, and then I come back to it and I go, oh, what's that? Like, that's lovely. Oh, it's a thing. Oh, I recorded that. I don't even know when I recorded that. We're like, and then that being the seed of something, that being the seed of a song or a little miniature piece of music or an instrumental or anything. Yeah.
Well, then that leads me to want to completely change that question and say, how do you erase the headspace between this is my normal daily crap of paying my phone bill and doing my laundry and being creative?
And I don't know that I have a good answer for that. I think I maybe do a lousy job of such separations, unless I'm like, I go through these phases where I'll say, okay, I am going to play the double bass for 90 minutes without interruption. Doesn't matter what I remember during that time that I'm forgetting that I'm supposed to have done. It doesn't matter that I just realized I forgot to put the laundry in. Like, I am sitting here and I'm doing this for an hour and a half and nothing is going to break that. Sadly, those days are few and far between these days, but there are days like that for me where I know if I give myself 90 minutes of absolutely uninterrupted time or don't heed the interruptions that come up, because I don't quarantine myself, but I try my best. But it's like you can't quarantine yourself from your own mind being like, oh, damn, I forgot to book such and such for that day. I needed to change that dentist appointment or something, you know. But if you just at least give yourself the space to ignore all those things. I watched a lecture once. There was like a filmed lecture that John Cleese gave to a random sort of assembly hall full of managerial types, and it was a conference on creativity. And he basically showed up. It seems like a thing of he was probably well paid to go and talk to all these corporate types. And he basically showed up and was like, well, I don't know how creativity works. I can't tell you. But I do know that if you isolate yourself for 90 minutes and you ignore anything that's trying to break your attention, something will come out of that time. And it seems obvious and kind of easy, but somehow giving a number to it just stuck in my brain. I was like, oh, that's really useful. And also 90 minutes is a lot easier than a whole half of your day, or, you know, it's just an pretty easy to find chunk of time.
Is that the same as stillness? As finding 90 minutes of stillness?
I think so. Stillness from other activity, right? It's like a border around building a wall around yourself to keep the scheduling at bay and the pragmatics at bay and the bills and the internet and all the nonsense, right? And I think making that gesture, I think you sow a seed when you make that, every time you make that gesture, you know, and that doesn't mean you're necessarily going to write the great American novel in that 90 minutes, but something will come out of that 90 minutes that would not have come out of a lesser period of time necessarily, or not giving, you know, not making a boundary, not giving that space to yourself, as it were. Yeah.
Well, the album Quiet River of Dust it feels like a whole collection of those, you know, of all those moments, because it really put me in a very particular headspace, which is another world. It felt like another world. It felt like some place that's just out of time, like it kind of messes with time itself. Did you do that consciously, or is that just where the music sits for you?
Both. And I mean, I'd be lying if I said I did it consciously, because I think I did it semi-consciously, but I was compelled to do that sort of unaware of the fact that I was doing that while I was doing it, if that makes sense. Where it's exactly what I said. It was like most of those songs are from times where I did not sit down purposefully and say, I am going to isolate myself and all I'm going to do is work on a song until I've got a song. Like, I don't think I could say that happened once on that whole record. It was never me being like, I am going to write a song now, or I'm going to write the missing song. Or there's definitely times where I sat down and said, all right, damn it, I'm going to finish this song. That's like a abstract, never-ending thing with no verses at this point, but it's still a song. So there were definitely times where it was like, okay, buddy, you gotta wrangle those cats into a cat highway. They can't just be going everywhere. They've got to at least have a direction, or they don't get to exist for other people to hear. All of the songs came from sitting and, you know, kind of post bath or afternoon in the rain in Montreal, where you're sitting on the porch and you don't want to leave and you just want to sit there kind of absorbing the gentle space that's happening around you. And then something just falls out of the guitar because I'm holding a guitar and I'm trying to read a book and I'm trying to trying to drink tea and read a book. It's exactly that. I'm trying to drink a book and read tea at the same time, and then out comes a song.
You said post-bath. Is that a good time for you?
It's a great time. Yeah. It's also a time where I take punishingly hot baths. It's one of my great loves. And then I'll just sit outside and sort of watch the steam come off of my arms and just sit there and have a glass of tea. And that happens in the fall too. I do that until I was doing that this week, even though it's like 0 degrees.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'll just do that.
Is that why so much of this album is about water?
There's a connection there. It's not trying to be topically about hot baths, but there's definitely a connection there. Yeah, of like something that is found in terms of personal space or head space, or something that is to be found in terms of personal space for me when I spend a long time swimming, or I spend a long time sitting in hot baths or many hot baths.
That's a really good description, actually, of the headspace of the album when you talk about personal space, because that's what it feels like when I'm listening. But when I'm listening to the songs, I also can't tell if these songs are coming from musical ideas that you've had or whether they are all experiences that you've had.
Again, I feel like the answer is both. I rarely, if ever, have advanced musical ideas. I have ideas of sound spaces that I would like to explore, or I'll hear something in passing coming out of a, distorted AM radio somewhere or something that I think sounds really interesting, and I'm compelled to, that weird little moment that you heard on the radio, wouldn't that make a great, if you extended that or you added huge drums to that or something, wouldn't that be special? Like that's more of like a sonic space. But I almost never have an idea in advance of, I would like to try a song that is this, or I want to try a song write a song that says this or is about X or Y. Like I don't really have that. I don't really hear ideas in my head before I sit down at an instrument, and then go and try and put them down on an instrument or on paper or anything. I don't really do that. But I can just like sit down with a tiny Casio keyboard and accidentally write the thing that becomes the interlude of the album later, when I discover that I recorded it 6 months later, and go, ooh, what's this beautiful thing? Whoa, it's so special, and it has such a meandering, explorative feel, and it keeps changing and never quite repeating itself, yet it stays in the kind of same vibe and the same zone. And I never, if you asked me to put those notes to paper, I would never be able to write those down in a premeditated sense.
It's almost like you're describing two different headspaces. One is just the creation headspace, and then the other is the listening later.
Yeah, and responding to the thing that has fallen out and sort of presented itself. Mm-hmm. And that's very much the kind of songs on the porch, post-bath kind of thing. It's like I just am always recording voice memos of myself. I would not get anything done if I didn't have easy access to that, because so many times I'll just flip back and listen. Like, often it happens on airplanes, weirdly, when I'm traveling, that I'll sort of take a survey of the last 6 months of voice memos, and then you sort of sit back and go, oh my goodness, what is this beautiful little thing? Oh, right, that beautiful little song idea. Like they're just so transient and so kind of falling out all the time, but I rarely attach myself to them and go, right, that's great, I'm going to finish that right now. Like, right. I'm a like write a song in a day or write a song in an hour kind of person. And I'm also rarely like, I don't do, the kind of Leonard Cohen slaving over the verses of Hallelujah for 7 years or something. I don't really do that either. It all seems to be much more meandering and happenstantial, and often that leading me to trying to use the actual recorded fragments that are the first time that I played the thing, because I think there's something, I was really influenced by the kind of talk method of making records, where they would get people to come in and improvise who wouldn't know what they were doing or hadn't heard the songs, and they wouldn't even necessarily be playing them the whole songs in the headphones. They'd be sending them the drums or some interesting instrument, and just have someone have a kind of impulsive first thought, best thought kind of moment and be recording while they're doing that, before they've thought about it, before they've considered it, before they know how the song goes, before they can try and sculpt what they're doing into a form that already exists. Just catch some sort of naive beginner's mind essence of a musical spirit, as it were, or a musical idea before it even knows itself. And that's an energy that I find I really respond to, these kind of accidental little perfections or semi-perfections, and trying to hang on to those. So a lot of things on the Quiet River record are that. And sometimes I go back and redo things because it's like, oh, that just wasn't recorded well enough, and I would like to have a better version of that. But a lot of the time it's like, no, there's really something special in that original strange vocal take or weird drums that I accidentally recorded before it was a song, and then we'll end up cutting up those kind of, originally played things into the shape of the song once I've worked on the song.
It makes sense to me because there is so much mystery in this record, and it does feel like when I'm listening, it's like trying to go for a memory, something that is just beyond your edge of memory, and you think if you stand still or not breathe for a moment, it might come back to you. And that's the world that this album evokes for me.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And for me, the album, a lot of it was about death or what happens after death. Death is a very strange thing for people to contemplate. A lot of people don't even want to think about it.
Sure.
Did you think about that when you were making this record, about how we as a culture avoid thoughts of death or what's next or what we're actually part of?
Yeah, I definitely did. And I was rolling all of those things around in my brain a lot, I think, while not wanting to hit people over the head with that in certain ways, and maybe hit them over the head with it in subtle ways. Like that picture that's over there on the wall. It's a woodblock print made by Peter Schumann from Bread and Puppet. That those of you who can't see the wall right now, it's just like a kind of a square frame around a skeleton standing and holding a door open with a kind of a neutral look on his face. It's a discarded print from a book called Don't Hold Your Breath, The One and Only Mr. Death. And the other picture is the same skeleton man, and he's kind of got his arms around a tree, and the tree is kind of bending over as if he's pulling it over, or as if there's like a great windstorm that's maybe blowing the tree and blowing him, and he's hanging onto the tree for dear life. And both of those images were really, they kind of affixed themselves into my brain early on in the process of this becoming a record. Kind of actively paint those pictures without being too gothic about it, but maybe just a little bit gothic, but maybe in a way that is a little more open-ended, or a little bit, I don't want to say sci-fi exactly, but like it took a tiny bit sci-fi, or just like alternate reality.
Well, the music goes there. I mean, the music goes into a kind of sci-fi, orchestral, soundscapey way, in a way that makes me marvel, because it's basically it feels like a small unit, particularly when you're watching you play live, but the sound is incredibly expansive.
Right, yeah, and trying to find that balance of doing something that feels like a tiny, precious little world, but that has these doors leading in all directions and is sort of permeated by elements coming through and reminding you that you're made of the same thing that they're made of, and that's what you come from, and that's what you're going to return to, and all of that. Where I think it's kind of at its most literal or apparent probably on that song I Was in the World, Was the World in Me, where it's literally kind of going through these elements. I was in the wind, was the wind in me. I was in the rain, was the rain in me. And this kind of image of like cyclical life,
This is an eternal album.
This is an eternal album, yeah. These are definitely eternal thoughts, and whether again, and I simultaneously didn't want to hit people over the head with that, and then totally did want to hit people over the head with that.
Is there a difference when you are writing and creating and working with Arcade Fire and when you are doing this solo work? Is there a different flavor or taste to the two things?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's like apples and oranges, kind of. Yeah, it's really. I mean, this essentially this is a solo process for me that I invite other people into in different formations and at different times. But there's no like arguing, or I wouldn't say there's much of any group process involved in this besides just sometimes playing together as a group and fleshing out musical ideas. But it really, sometimes we'll record something and then I'll just come back and cut everything out of it and tinker with the one single element of it on my own, and then that'll become the song. Or it's really, this feels like much more of a jigsaw puzzle that is me playing behind the curtain a lot of the time and figuring out where it's a band and where it's just me using my weird demo recordings and building bigger songs and recordings on top of those. And whereas Arcade Fire is like loads of very strong opinions and a lead songwriter and all of us sort of bashing each other over the head, arguing about things, and really being like a band and trying to figure out what that means all the time.
Like a litter of puppies?
A little bit, yeah. A bunch of really annoying puppies in a room together.
I can see, though, with the jigsaw metaphor and being a solo record, the danger is never finishing.
For sure. Yeah, and it just definitely took me a long time. Thankfully, it turned into 2 records, which is why it took me so long. So it feels like not an embarrassingly long time to spend 5 years making 2 records, but it would feel a little, well, whatever. You also just have to follow your nose and let it take as long as it takes, and have patience with it. I'm simultaneously like to take forever, and I'm kind of impatient, which is a funny combo pack of.
That must cause you a lot of suffering.
It does, yeah. It's a lot of suffering. Yeah.
I think that the best intro to this record is actually your idea of taking a really hot bath. That would be fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I would, if there was a pragmatically simple way to do that, I think I would do that. I think the dream performance scenario for this, or like perception, audience experience of this thing would be like everybody sitting in a hot spring for a long time and then kind of getting out of that being some beautiful place by running water, and us playing in a dome set up by the water, so you can kind of hear running water in the background, and then we get to do our thing, but you're sort of surrounded by actual nature sounds at the same time, and you're sort of, and after having come out of the hot bath. For me, the thing about the hot bath is it kind of turns off your brain in a really nice way, and it just, you sort of become more your body brain than
embodied
your head brain. Yeah. And it's like your kind of awareness is all sort of inside your body instead of in your brain, and you don't really think about much, which for me feels great.
Okay, so get wet, get clean, get really hot, and don't think very much, and turn on this album.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah. Doesn't sound like such a bad recipe.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
And now, for the musical portion of this Pondercast, get comfortable. This is quite a trip. This is Quiet River of Dust. Once upon a timeless time, beyond words, where thoughts can't even reach, somewhere you've never been, but you've dreamt about, there is a home waiting for you. There are no maps, no directions, yet you are getting closer all the time. The way there is imprinted in your muscles, bone, and marrow. Is this about where we go when we die? Or how we feel when we actually get to reconnect with the earth? or both. Relax. You have everything you need for this journey. Your guides are everywhere. Just stop doing and start being. The wind will push you, the trees will stand firm with you, the ground will hold you. But first, the rain is going to come and wash away everything you think you know. Only then can you begin to find your way home.
First the rain begins, and the quiet settles in, and it's awesome, and it's awesome, and it covers everything. Says you've lost him. Says you've lost him. Thin old face coming, and it rains for a second day. Smile. Singing all the way, 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 singing
It's like an underground river in you, deep inside, where your real life is flowing. Can you feel the current of you? Is that your true nature? And who else is in there with you in your quiet river? Your people? Your past?
in those days, lost in time, lost in left behind, taken over each float into the air, and the memories we've made get lost or
You belong here. You feel welcomed here, you and your true nature. There are no membership fees, no requirements, no uniform, no beliefs, no religion, no motive. This is a very special place, and you have been away from this world for far too long. It's time to walk it back. Let's go.
I was alone, I was finally home in the fields with the stars and the corn. The old clothes and the photographs of the children when they were born. I turned on my radio and dialed into the old world and the old sound.
go the world that you know. That world has lost the signal. It's time to retune. Everything will work itself out here in this unnameable, limitless, timeless place, beyond what you dare to imagine, on this far side of the quiet river. There is order, balance, nothing to do, nothing to fix, but feel how you surrender, absorbing the rocks and the water and the trees, your atoms realigning. Feel how the earth breathes you in. How long would you need to spend here to retune yourself to the world?
I was in the wind with the wind in me, waiting from the crown of an old dead tree, staring at the lake, staring back at me. See the whole world start to turn. See the colors start to run. Turn again. I was in the waves with the waves in me, floating on the top of a rolling sea, staring at the sky, staring back at me, and we swallowed the sun. I was in the woods with the falling trees. Leaves are in the air that we're breathing. Breathing in the air, and my body takes lead as we turn, turn, turn again.
All of your absent people are here, no longer silent and invisible. All those who have been here before have pulled you home. Is there a message? Is this a memory? It's just beyond your grasp, better felt, not spoken. Just feel the world tilt backwards and forwards.
Wind, come in, come on. Tell them I'm coming.
Who took this home away from us? Who's behind that? And what's behind that? Can we reclaim this world? And why do we always turn back before we get here? A timeless time. A timeless time. A timeless time. Relax. You have everything you need. Relax. You have everything you need. Relax. You have everything you need. Is this a memory? Is this a memory? Is this a memory? Singing all the way. Singing all the way. Singing all the way. La pluie s'en vient. La tempête pourrait laver tout ce que vous pensez connaître. Feel the world breathe you in as you dissolve. Feel the world as you dissolve. As you dissolve. The quiet settles in, and it's awesome. And it falls on everyone. Chantons tous les longs du voyage. Do you live your life, or does it live you? Take me to the hills. Take me through the shadows. Take me through the shadows. Take me through the shadows. Singing all the way. Singing all the way.